for a special meeting of the County of San Diego's Independent Redistricting Commission. Following this brief special meeting, I'll emphasize brief, we'll be holding the second of our pre-mapping public hearings for the IRC to gather public input on communities of interest and other important factors to consider in how county supervisorial district lines should be drawn. We've planned to conduct our special meeting business until about 5:55 p.m. We'll then take a short break and allow the technicians to do their magic, and then move on into the pre-mapping public hearing, which we will start and must start promptly at 6 p.m. Once the pre-mapping public hearing is finished, we will continue as appropriate any unfinished business from the IRC special meeting agenda. Before we call the roll, I'd like to take a moment to introduce a new face to the IRC team. Our commission clerk, regular commission clerk, I should say, David Hall, is on leave this week. In his seat, I'm pleased to welcome Assistant Clerk of the Board of Supervisors, Ryan Sharp. Many of you saw Ryan at our last meeting as he was observing the proceedings, but by way of introduction, Ryan's fairly new to the county, having just joined the clerk of the board's office in mid-July. He arrives with valuable experience from the county of Humboldt, where he served as a deputy clerk of the Board of Supervisors and as clerk there during board meetings. So while David will be back for our next meeting, let me again welcome Ryan to our meeting today and turn to him for additional information about tonight's meeting. Ryan.
Thank you, Chair Bam. At this time, I will invite any members of the public who wish to speak to the IRC during today's meeting to please review the instructions posted on the redistricting website at www.sandiegocounty.gov/redistricting. We ask that individuals who wish to speak to the IRC complete a form in advance for planning purposes. Individuals participating virtually or by phone are asked to submit an online request. And all individuals wishing to speak in person can complete a physical speaker slip. Staff has speaker slips available. All requests to speak from the public made at today's meeting, either in person, by phone, or virtually, will be honored, regardless of whether you have submitted an advance request. Agendas, minutes, and supporting materials for the commissioners' meeting are posted on the redistricting website, including instructions to request translation. Meeting agendas are translated into Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, Filipino, Arabic, Japanese, Korean, and Laotian as required by law.
Thank you very much, Ryan. The next item on the agenda is the roll call. Ryan, could you please call the roll?
Thank you. Before I call the roll, I'd like to note for the record that commissioners are participating in person and via teleconference. As such, all votes will be handled by a roll call vote. I'll ask the commissioners to respond with here or present when called upon. A reminder for commissioners who are attending virtually to please unmute your microphone. Chair Boehm.
Here.
Vice Chair Katarina.
Here. Here.
Vice Chair Garcia.
Here.
Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Chen.
Here.
Commissioner Diaz.
Here.
Commissioner Dostal. No. Commissioner Hanson.
Here.
Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Kugelak. Commissioner Larson.
Here.
Commissioner Pons.
Here.
Commissioner Russ. Commissioner Servin.
Present.
Thank you, Chair Boehm. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Ryan. The next item on the agenda is a discussion of flow analytics intent, and bear with me so that I can read this into the record, to select racially polarized voting analysis subcontractor, Dr. Christian Gross, pursuant to section 1.4 of county contract number 564865 and possible approval of associated contract budget amendment. This is, of course, an update and possible further action from our last IRC meeting. I'll turn now to Commissioner Ken Inman in his duties as IRC single point of contact for flow analytics for opening remarks, and I believe followed then by comments and a presentation led by John McKenzie with the flow analytics team. Commissioner Inman, the floor is yours. Commissioner Inman, I think you're muted.
Is that better?
It is. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Essentially what we're talking about here is the RPV, racially polarized voting analysis, to be conducted by a subcontractor through flow analytics. And so the way I want to outline what we're doing is to go back to the initial meeting where we started this discussion. So back in July 29 meeting, we did review the RPV proposal from Flow. And at that time, we were looking with an eye towards getting the work completed by the end of September to dovetail in with when we were going to approximately finish up the public hearings, or the pre-draft mapping public hearings, so that we would have all the information we needed, the RPV analysis, as well as the public input on communities of interest. And so to make sure that we could stay on track, in that July 29 meeting, we did review the RPV proposal, as well as designated me the SPOC, the SPOC for Flow, to be able to concur, or to be a designee that could concur with any decisions that they were making regarding subcontractors. The other important point that we talked about in that meeting were the triggers that would require formal approval of a subcontractor by the IRC. And those were twofold: anything that's in excess of 25% of Flow's contract, or more than $50,000. Well, the relevant number here is going to be 25% of the Flow contract, which actually is almost $50,000, but it's $49,810. So any subcontract agreement that is less than $49,810 doesn't require formal approval of the IRC. So that's what we did July 29. In our August 12 meeting, then we got an update from Flow, and in that meeting, they provided an informational update because we hadn't moved to the point where we actually had a formal proposal. Again, I was engaged in that time period with Flow, reviewing the process, looking at potential candidates. In the August 12th meeting, they actually put forth a list of potential subcontractors that they were reaching out to and requesting proposals from, but no such proposals had actually been submitted or returned. And so now we move on to today, August 18th, our current meeting. Flow does have a subcontractor that they have selected to do the RPV analysis, and that is Dr. Gross, as you see in the slide. He's doing this work along with two colleagues. And so it's a three-person team led by Dr. Gross. What happens now is we look at the proposal that we received. And so as you'll see on this slide, the contract amount we list as $30,100. And so that amount is less than the $49,810 trigger for a formal approval process by the IRC. And that $30,100 is actually the sum of the project proposal. If you looked at that budget sheet that is included in the agenda, plus the travel and extra fees. So that's how we came up with the total amount for the RPV analysis. But again, that's less than the trigger amount, and so there's no formal agreement or approval from the IRC that's going to be required for this. Other relevant points at this time. Timing is still critical. If you looked at the proposal coming back from Dr. Gross, they are on track and are confident that they can meet the end of September deadline. The process of selecting Dr. Gross, again, as I said, as POC, I was engaged in that as well as council and staff. We all followed the process and we all concurred, essentially. We did all concur with the selection. We agreed that Dr. Gross and colleagues is an excellent team to have conduct this analysis for us, and will give us the required quality analysis that we need to be able to use as we move forward with drafting the new supervisorial boundaries for San Diego County. And by way of introduction, CVs are included in the packet, so you can look at the credentials for Dr. Gross, Dr. Peterson, and Dr. Nasauka. I probably didn't say the name correctly. Sorry there, but they all have relevant experience in the field, and definitely have the credentials we need to support the analysis. So what does need to be approved is the additional budget required to conduct this analysis. And the additional budget is needed because instead of having Flow do this internally, they had allocated $18,000 against this project internally. We did go outside so that we could get better credentialed candidates to complete the analysis to support us in moving forward with this mapping process. And so that additional amount is incorrectly stated on this slide. The actual additional amount is $21,050, not $21,500. $21,000 and $21,050 is the actual additional budgeted amount that would be required according to the current budget. And so the motion then, which we would like to entertain, the motion would be to approve that amount. And by approving that motion, we are actually approving two things. Essentially, we would never approve the budgeted amount if we didn't concur with the selection of the team to conduct the analysis. But in essence, all that we are formally required to approve is that budgeted amount. And so with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Boehm. I think that, or turn it over to Flo to see if they have any additional comments on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. John, or anyone from Flow, anything to add to that?
I'll just say thank you, Commissioner Inman, for summarizing that. I'm glad I didn't have to do it. If you can't tell, my voice is not in the best shape tonight. But yeah, we're very happy with the selection of Dr. Gross. He's been very good to work with. He's very well credentialed, and we feel that there is we really like that he is teaming with other folks who are experienced in this area due to the tight timeline and timeframe deadlines we need to meet. If somebody gets sick, what do you know? Then we do have other experts who are able to carry that work if something like that were to happen. So we are happy that he is working with the team. And then I will also say that we, Flow, will be doing a portion of the data preparation, which we are also happy with because it allows us to start right now as we are working through the contracts with discussing contracts with Dr. Gross and his team. It allows us to do the data preparation tasks and get started, because those will happen no matter what. And so it does streamline this process and will allow us to meet those deadlines. So those are two things that we're very happy about with Dr. Gross.
Very good, thanks. And John, thank you for joining. My advice would be, as I found the other day in a meeting, if your voice is sore, get one of your kids on the line and they'll deliver your message more effectively and it'll be more welcomed anyway. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Inman. And thanks again for such a good process and getting things clear to meet the tasking that we had already sent to you. Before we move to clarifying questions and comments, I wanted to ask, of course, if there are comments from members of the public who want to address the IRC on this item. Ryan, do we have any requests?
Thank you, Chair Bame. We did not receive any advance requests to speak on this item, but if anyone would like to address the commission on this item, we would welcome your comments. Those present who wish to address the commission, please come forward to the microphone, and those participating remotely, please raise a virtual hand by clicking the raise hand button on Zoom or by pressing *9 if you are dialing in by phone. I'd like to also note that we did not receive any e-comments on this item. I will also note that the log of correspondence received, including comments that have been submitted through the Community Builder tool, has been updated and provided to commissioners and is posted on the IRC website. Correspondence received is posted on the website with today's meeting materials, and the commissioner's logs of ex parte communications has been updated on the IRC website. Not seeing any movement in the room or virtually, that would conclude public comment, Chair Bame.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan. Do you have clarifying questions or comments from commissioners? I have Commissioner Serban. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the clarification and presentation, Commissioner Inman, and welcome to Flo for being here. My question, I'd like to understand sort of the sequence of how this is going to work. So the analysis that's going to be performed, will we be able to use that in arriving at I think you had mentioned that there'd be like 4 or 5 preliminary draft maps that Flo would produce. The RPV analysis, will that be used in producing the initial handful of preliminary draft maps, or will that only occur after those maps are produced?
It will be done before those maps are produced.
John, you're muted, I'm afraid.
I don't think I am. I'm just
I think it was on our end. Sorry.
okay. I wouldn't blame you for muting me. That will be done before those maps are drawn. I would like to say that the interpretation of this analysis will be done. The analysis will be conducted and then written in a report by Dr. Groves and his team. However, it will be legal counsel who will essentially provide the interpretation of that analysis, which will guide how the RPV analysis is used in the drawing of maps. But the analysis will be complete before we're drawing those maps.
If I could just add again, our schedule still remains. First draft maps won't be produced until sometime in mid-October, just because of various timing constraints and legal requirements that we face. And so that is why we're trying to get this RPV done by the end of September. So as we stated, it could be part of any analysis that we do in conjunction with communities of interest and public input when we start drawing maps.
Okay. Any other clarifying questions or comments? Seeing none. And as this is an action item that requires a motion before any discussion, let me ask for the motion to be displayed again as I read it out loud. And I hope these words track. I'm going to request a motion for approval of an amendment in the amount of $21,050. Correct, Commissioner Inman?
No, 20, or wait a minute. Yeah, you were right. 21050.
Good. Good to be sure. In that amount to county contract number 564865 for the demographic services of Flow Analytics for the purpose of subcontracting at the request of the commission for racially polarized voting analysis pursuant to section 1.4 of the contract. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Okay, take Commissioner Hanson moving and seconded by Commissioner Larson. Any discussion? Go to a vote in just a few seconds. Very good. Ryan, would you please call the roll for a vote?
Yes, Chair Bame, and thank you. And I will note the commissioner's name will continue to be called at random. Commissioner Larson,
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Katerina,
Aye.
Commissioner Servin,
Aye.
Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Pons,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Chair Bame,
Aye.
and that. Thank you, Chair Bame. With all commissioners who are present voting aye, the motion passes unanimously.
Very good. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Ryan. And again, thanks particularly to Commissioner Inman and to Flow Analytics and John for the presentation. Next, we turn to agenda item 4, a discussion and possible approval of retaining special counsel, including possible approval of a statement of work. This is a continuation of the IRC's discussion at our last meeting. Commissioners should have received a draft statement of work for special counsel in the package for today's meeting. Let me now turn to Marguerite Leone, our IRC General Counsel, for more on this issue. Marguerite.
Thank you very much, Chair Bame. And we do have a PowerPoint. And we can go to the next slide. At our last meeting, commissioners were interested in additional information prior to proceeding on this particular item. And the information requested was a draft statement of work, which was provided to you. It's subject, obviously, to discussion by you and suggestions, amendments. The commission also requested information about the practices of other commissions. In the time provided, we were unable to canvass them all, but this is a very good sampling. And overwhelmingly, the commissions in the state of California are bringing on special counsel primarily focused on the Voting Rights Act. There are a variety of ways in which they are proceeding. Some of them are a separate retention. Others of them are combined with the racially polarized voting expert. And there's at least one commission that combined their general counsel with both special counsel capabilities. But no matter, as is evident from this chart, nearly all, and these are mandatory commissions, statutory, charter commissions, and advisory, are proceeding by way of special counsel on the sensitive issues primarily focused on the Voting Rights Act. So we can go to the next slide. You were provided a more formal document reflecting a statement of work to be performed. And I've summarized that document on the next 2 slides. And the focus of the statement of work is primarily review of documentation with a special skill and ability to interpret the racially polarized voting, and to work with the commission in the development of maps to provide legal opinion in the interim as required regarding draft maps. Those opinions can be both oral and written if the commission feels it needs a written opinion, with the duty of the special counsel culminating in a formal written report that would support the commission's selection of a final map as consistent with the Federal Voting Rights Act. This is the reason I'm not going over these point by point, is because it was provided, and this is a summary of what you were provided in your agenda packets. Next slide, please. oh, I'm sorry, these are the qualifications of the applicants, and we can move on. The ability to do all of the work and experience to do the work that I just outlined. And going on to the next slide. What are the goals of the retention of special counsel? The goals are an independent evaluation of the legal sufficiency of maps. Now, the focus is primarily under the Federal Voting Rights Act, but that may require an analysis of how compliance impacts other criteria. So this is not meant to be expansive, but not so narrow that the special counsel can't comment that to comply with the Voting Rights Act will require perhaps a division of a community of interest. But under the circumstance, that would be legal. So the goal would be the legal sufficiency of maps. The second goal is a goal that is consistent with the personality of this commission. And that is going the extra mile to ensure compliance with your mandate in both AB 801 and AB 1276. Retaining special counsel is also an action consistent with the commission's independence, in the sense that we have concluded you have the ability to bring on consultants. Your general counsel is staff and is very pleased to serve you, but you have the independence to bring on this independent legal review, which your legal staff fully supports. We also believe that it is an important addition to the commission's final report. We will soon be talking about this in more detail because the process will be intense. But you must file with the map, not after, simultaneously with a map, a report explaining the basis of the compliance, the bases, the features of the map that bring it into compliance with law. I think that a legal opinion from special counsel would enhance that report. You will not be saying we were told it was legal. You will have the opinion there in your report. And lastly, I think an opinion and going that extra mile, having legal guidance in the exercise of your discretion will be very protective for your map in the event of a litigation. We can go to the next slide, although the next slide is somewhat premature because we need to return the topic to the chair for clarifying questions. But just in doing this work for you, I did develop a motion. It is not mandatory. Language can be changed. But before going back to the chair, unless the chair would like to take it back at this point, another question that was asked at the last meeting was the cost. And we have the person keeping our books for us with her financial expertise available to discuss that. And Chair, would you like to take it back or shall we go to Nicole?
No, if Nicole's comfortable and ready, by all means.
Thank you, Chair Boehm and Marguerite. I'm happy to provide the Commission with some brief insight into the capacity of your budget, the IRC budget, to support the retention of special counsel. Again, I'm Nicole Temple on the IRC staff. This slide shows the IRC budget line items in the contracted services category that address legal services. The first line shows that the IRC's amended budget includes $400,000 for general and procurement counsel, which supports the existing contract of Marguerite's firm, Nielsen, Merksimer, Perinello, Gross, and Leone LLP. The variance column here shows the anticipated funds that are available. In this line item, there are none. The contracted services category also includes a line item for additional legal counsel of $60,000. As noted on the slide, the IRC's Budget Ad Hoc Committee's final report from May 27th envisioned the use of this additional legal counsel line item for the services of Marguerite's firm, Nielsen Merksimer, that are not covered in the current amended contract. To date, there are no planned uses for that amount. The next line item here for external legal, which is $50,000, was intended for expert legal redistricting counsel that may include rendering opinions on the legal sufficiency of maps or portions of maps and legal questions. And that was as defined by the IRC's Budget Ad Hoc Committee in their final report. So this is the line item that could be used to support the retention of special counsel. While it is too early in the process to have a solid cost estimate for special counsel, our discussions with our IRC general counsel have indicated that a rough estimate of approximately $60,000 would be reasonable. So the next line item, in the contracted services category, also includes a line item for other, which is budgeted at $95,000, which could be used to support any costs of special counsel that may exceed the budgeted line item for external legal, which was $50,000. The IRC's Budget Ad Hoc Committee's final report stated that this other line item in contracted services is intended for additional contractors or new or expanded task orders. I will note that the amount available in the contracted services other line item would be impacted by the IRC's decision on the request from Flow Analytics for additional funding for the racially polarized voting analysis subcontractor. As approved tonight, that this amount here would decrease by the $21,050 requested by Flow and approved by the IRC, which would leave just under $74,000 available for other purposes in contracted services, including the retention of special counsel. Subject to your questions, this concludes my presentation.
Very good. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Marguerite. And before we turn to anything else, I want to offer my apologies to the commission for not having these slides before you ahead of the meeting, as well as to the public, frankly, because that's what we try to do, is provide those in advance. It's for a number of reasons, not the least of which, as you know, is that the computer system was having multiple problems the last several days, and it just made the information flow that much more difficult. I may try to form an ad hoc committee using John McKenzie's children and any other commissioner's children to work on this and help our IT colleagues. But we do have the information, and that's the important thing. I also want to note for the record that Commissioner Russ has joined us virtually. Good to have you. And before we move on, I want to open the floor to members of the public who may wish to address the IRC on this agenda item. Ryan, are there any requests from the public on this item?
Thank you, Chair Bain. We did not receive any advance requests to speak on this item, but if anyone would like to address the commission on this item, we'd welcome your comments. Those present who wish to address the commission, please come forward to the microphone. And for those participating remotely, please raise a virtual hand by clicking the raise hand button on Zoom or by pressing *9 if you are dialing in by phone. We'll also note that we did not receive any e-comments for this item. Not seeing any movement in the chambers and not seeing any movement online. That would conclude public comment.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan. Any clarifying questions or comments from commissioners? I have Commissioner Chen, Commissioner Inman, and we'll start with that. Commissioner Chen, please go ahead.
So I have two questions. One, Flow Analytics mentioned with the RPV analysis that they would do an analysis, but that it had to be interpreted by legal counsel. And from the scope of work that we just saw, it would appear to imply that the current legal contract does not cover the RPV analysis. I just want to see if that's correct. And therefore, if we don't do this, we do not have any legal analysis for our RPV. Is that a correct statement?
With the permission of the chair.
Please go ahead.
It's a difficult question to answer. I'm obviously buying time, Commissioner Chen. I am experienced and capable of interpreting the RPV. At this point, it is not part of my contract. I am your general counsel. My contract could be amended to include those services. However, my recommendation, but certainly for the commission to take or leave, is for the commission to be served by an independent consultant to do that.
Okay, so it sounds like my statement is correct, that at the moment, we, in spite of spending $400,000 for legal services, do not have any services to review the RPV. The second question I have is regarding, you said a protective measure from having this special counsel analysis or hiring special counsel. My question would be, we know that so let me talk a bit to the other commissioners too. We know what the legal requirements are. We will try and apply those as we create the maps. My question would be then, if we have a special counsel review the maps and give us their opinion, if we are in fact challenged on the legality of our maps, what does that buy us? What is having a legal counsel, having given an opinion, how does that help us if we are in fact, if the maps are challenged? Does it do anything, or do we have to just hire more counsel to defend the maps at that point?
What I believe it gives to you is guidance from professionals in the field as to the elements that result in compliance with the Federal Voting Rights Act. And that advice, and you're following that advice and accepting the legal opinion, will provide a level of protection to your map. To move forward without that type of advice, based only on percentages in a district, runs the risk of either failing in compliance in a number of ways. It's Voting Rights Act compliance is not simply a numbers game. And I think that advice and the legal support that you've followed will provide an additional level of protection to your mapping.
So I've got a question. What is that protection? How does that instantiate? How does that manifest? We don't get a guarantee or anything. They won't, as part of their contract, then defend with their legal opinion, I assume.
Yeah.
So what is that protection? How does that, what form does that protection take?
That protection takes the form of properly advising the commission heeding that advice, and the legal rationale for that advice being set forth in the record. And that provides a level of protection in the event of litigation. There will be an initial manifestation that the plan was legally vetted and by professionals in the field. And nothing can stop litigation. A good legal opinion might stop litigation. Somebody who's dead set on suing you is going to do it anyway. But the rationale would be set forth right up front as to why the commission proceeded in the manner that it did. And I believe it would provide protection. It's like a legal opinion for a very complicated business transaction.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Inman.
Yes, thank you. I guess this is more procedural. Who oversees special counsel, or is this going to be a subcontractor from your, Marguerite, your firm? I guess, how does this get set up? That's my question.
It is a good question. And there are a variety of options. we set forth a obvious one at the last meeting, but there's been no decisions. There was we had to cross the bridge first about whether we felt this was a good idea, whether the commission felt this was a good idea. Your bylaws provide that there can be an SPOC for your consultants. Your special counsel is a consultant. There are a number of ways, but that's after we've got them on board and under contract. But there are a number of avenues for contracting, which are being explored right now to bring those options back to you. It was not possible to settle that down in time for this meeting. But the three obvious ways are, number one, through DPC. And that takes some exploration in order to respect the independence of the commission and the importance of this decision. Number two, without involving DPC, mechanically, the special counsel can be brought in under my contract. A third way to go that is expeditious, and we're hoping is mechanical, is that special counsel potentially can be brought in through the Office of County Counsel. I hope that wasn't, should I repeat that, Commissioner Inman?
No, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, I apologize for that interruption. I didn't turn my phone off, and there you go.
Okay. Noting that we are at 5:47, I have Commissioner Serban, but no other hands raised. So we may move expeditiously to a vote after Commissioner Serban unless there are any other speakers. Commissioner Serban, please.
Thank you for the presentation, Marguerite. Appreciate the service as counsel. And thanks for organizing me, Chair Boehm. So if we're to structure this as a subcontract under your master contract to provide legal services, do we need to then amend the legal service agreement that we have with you to include RPV analysis within the scope of work, such that then we can have a subcontract of that work out to whoever we end up choosing?
Commissioner Serban, that is one way to do it. It's probably the fastest way to do it. So yes, my contract we would enter into a subcontract as Flo is doing with special counsel. In order to bring that special counsel on board, my contract would be amended to include the amount for special counsel. And the county then would pay special counsel through my contract, through my billings.
And one other question, just I see that in the proposed statement of work, or the RFI, I think is what you referred to it as, that was distributed earlier. The numbered items, are those going to be captured in the statement of work? So for example, like number 7 is a fairly specific, sounds like it's a specific task. So I'm wondering if number 7 is going to make it as a actual thing within the scope of work.
Yes, in my view, the scope of work would be attached to the contract and made a part of it.
Okay, I mean, because it's the numbered items are introduced as almost like these are the things that we want the subcontractor to be qualified to do, but it's not stated as these are the things that they'll be doing.
I see your point. No, I would, between last meeting and this meeting, I drafted a vehicle that could include the tasks. And that can be clarified for sure, and I believe should be.
And there's obviously a lot of work that has to be done before we go too far along in the process. But given the nature of the previous discussion, it seemed most appropriate to get at least this initial statement of work drafted with these sections about, in effect, qualifications of people who are able to do this, how that would actually be carried out, and which of those options, or perhaps other options that Commissioner Inman was asking about, that's all work we're going to have to do if we go ahead with this motion or with the process of going for a special counsel. Okay. Co-Vice Chair Garcia, noting that the time is 5:50 and we're going to have to stop in about 5 minutes. Go ahead, though, please.
Yes, a quick clarifying question. Are we going to then limit perhaps our motion to just approving, basically deciding that we are going to go forward with special counsel? And the reason I'm asking that question is that we haven't really looked at or discussed the proposed statement of work and experience. And is that just sort of a draft that we're looking at, and we're not going to gather comments on that? That would be after the motion. I'm just trying to clarify, I guess, a little bit process and what the motion is that we are going to be entertaining.
I developed a proposed motion. It can certainly be modified. The draft statement of work is just a draft. We have not had input on it, but it was a framework in which to make a decision to hire. I think the statement of work, as Commissioner Serban points out, needs to be refined.
Okay, great. That's right. That helps me a lot. Thank you.
Okay.
Very good. Let's see if we can get it in under the wire. Let me bring up the motion again on the screen as proposed by Marguerite. I'm sorry, Commissioner Diaz, did you have a question? Or a comment?
Yeah, so if we amend any part of the legal services agreement to include an additional scope of work, would it also have to come back to the commission for a vote?
Oh, yes.
We have to do what?
Okay.
What was the question?
Commissioner Diaz, can you repeat that?
If we were to go the route of including the subcontractor in the legal services agreement, Marguerite's firm, would that then have to come back to the IRC for a vote?
Yeah. And I think, while I respect Marguerite's comment on it, that's ultimately something that has to come to the commission as part of the proposal with options. That if that option was adopted, whether or not it would include that kind of action and how the vote would be done. So I don't want to get too far down any procedural road right now, other than to look at the statement of work and maybe the issue in general. So,
okay, and Commissioner Diaz, I had understood that if it came through my contract, but the chair is absolutely correct. None of these decisions have been made.
okay, so we have about 2 to 3 minutes. There's a motion on the screen, which I'm happy to entertain a motion to that effect, that the commission retain special counsel to perform legal services relative to draft and final redistricting maps as set forth in the draft statement of work presented to the commission. Commissioner Serban?
So moved.
Second from Commissioner Pons. We can have a discussion. I want to be very careful that if there's a certain, without cutting anyone off, but if there's any major discussion, we're going to have it after the public hearing. Any comments or discussion? Sorry, Commissioner Larson?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the work here, but how can we vote on a draft statement of work when we haven't received one?
I think the RFI was supposed to serve as a draft statement of work.
That's correct. That is correct. And it is just a draft. It was a framework for discussion. So it is retaining special counsel as set forth in the draft statement of work, but the final draft hasn't been approved.
And frankly, so my comment, David, if it was my turn, is that I'm loath to vote to retain special counsel without a final statement of work and a price. I would like to see a motion with both an NTE and a final statement of work before we vote to approve special counsel.
I'm sorry, what was the first part?
I would like to see a motion with an NTE amount and a final statement of work before we vote to retain special counsel.
Let me take Commissioner Diaz, then Commissioner Hanson, and then we're going to have to suspend. Commissioner Diaz.
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
Good. Commissioner Hanson.
I would like to amend the original motion to say, to remove the word retain and exchange it for the terms move forward in the process of deciding whether or not to retain.
Did you hear me? I would like to take out the word retain and replace it with the words move forward in the process of deciding whether or not to retain special counsel. I would like to propose an amendment to that motion.
Okay, so I've got that written down. I think staff got it written down. What we'll do is work that into the slide. So when we come back, we can start from that point. Commissioners, I appreciate your patience on that. All right. It is 5:56 p.m. So I'm going to recess the special meeting for a quick break, again, primarily to let our technicians catch up and make sure the members of the public who've just arrived have their time respected. We will start as close to 6 p.m. as we possibly can in 3 minutes. So for anyone leaving the room, please get back here quickly, and then we'll resume the special meeting. With that, we are in recess till 6 p.m. for the public hearing. Otherwise, you could have that Amy and I do it in the officer's duties that aren't allowed to assign to them. But given what we've got, and given that I always prefer other commissioners to be involved, I'm 99% sure commissioners would like to be involved. So, Amy did in the motion to approve that. ready with the contingency? But that's fine. Commissioners joining us virtually, will be calling to order in just a moment. Good. We all good on the technical side? Excellent. They do some great work, I'll tell you. Okay, thank you very much for your patience. Noting that the time is 6:04 p.m., I'll call this pre-mapping public hearing to order. I want to thank the members of the public who are with us in person and virtually, as well as my fellow commissioners, staff, council, and others here for this pre-mapping public hearing of the County of San Diego's Independent Redistricting Commission, also known as the IRC. It's really, really an honor to have all of you here today. It's an honor to have those with us who are participating virtually as we conduct the next of our multiple pre-mapping public hearings. This is, of course, our chance to hear from you, the public, about your communities, your interests, district boundaries, your neighborhoods, anything that you can contribute to our work as part of public input. Our purpose, though, again, is to listen and learn as much as we can, particularly about communities of interest. And we're going to talk about what a community of interest is in a moment. For now, I want to begin by saying that the information we hear from you about your community is critical for the IRC, as it will inform the work of drawing new boundaries for the 5 members of the County Board of Supervisors later this fall, as the IRC continues its work. For that reason, hearing from the public at these pre-mapping public hearings intentionally comes before the line drawing work of the IRC begins, probably in early October, as you were just hearing. I'll begin by asking the IRC clerk, Ryan Sharp, to provide additional information about today's meeting. Ryan.
Thank you, Chair Bain. At this time, I will invite any members of the public who wish to speak to the IRC during today's meeting to please review the instructions posted on the redistricting website at www.sandiegocounty.gov/redistricting. We ask that individuals wish to speak to the IRC complete a form in advance for planning purposes. Individuals participating virtually or by phone are asked to submit an online request, and all individuals wishing to speak in person can complete a physical speaker slip. Staff has speaker slips available. All requests to speak from the public made at today's meeting, either in person, by phone, or virtually, will be honored, regardless of whether you have submitted an advance request. Thank you, Chair Bain.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Just to preview how we'll proceed in this pre-mapping public hearing today. We'll have a brief presentation that you will see on the screen. That will include a refresher and update on redistricting. Then we'll provide an orientation on what to expect in these pre-mapping public hearings in a little more detail than I just gave you. Then our IRC demographer, Flow Analytics, will provide a brief overview of their community builder tool, a really, really powerful and interesting tool for providing data and maps from the public as we roll ahead. And then it'll be your turn. That's when we need your input, because as you'll find out, your participation really is critical to our mission. This pre-mapping public hearing is again designed to allow the public to inform the commission about your community, neighborhood, and other aspects of communities of interest, and your views on the importance of keeping it intact during the redistricting process. To help us understand who's in attendance and to make sure we're reaching as many people as possible, I'll ask you to fill out one of the postcards that you see on your seats. For those of you who are here in person, for those of you participating virtually, please follow or see the instructions on our website or contact a member of our staff. With that, I'm going to turn to Commissioner Frank Pons on my left to share with you a refresher and an update on redistricting and the role of the IRC. Frank.
Thank you, Chair Bain. Can you hear me out there in the audience? Listen, it is very nice to be here with you all this evening. And I want to say that because, you know, I am one of you. We are one of you. I am a resident of District 1, and I live in San Miguel Ranch, and it's a pleasure to live there. So this meeting has several purposes. One, to continue to educate the public on what we are doing. Two, to have a better understanding from your perspective of what we are doing. And three, to generate ideas, insights, and to create a discussion on how we can do it better because we understand what your interests are. And so I want you to think of that as we go forward because we want to hear from you. As Chair Boehm said, your comments and your inputs, they are critical, not essential, not important, they are critical. So what is redistricting? Redistricting is the process of redrawing district boundaries for each of the 5 supervisory districts so that each district has reasonable equal populations. Reasonable equal populations. Now you're going to hear that term used frequently throughout this brief, and it is applied judiciously throughout the process. We redraw new boundaries every 10 years based on the census data. As you know, our federal government conducts a census every 10 years, where it conducts a count of all individuals residing in the United States at the location where they live. Counting everyone who lives in our county, in our state, in our country, it's very important because our Constitution sets population as the basis for sharing political power. Now, next slide, please. Now, there's a criteria in our guidelines that we use in redrawing the district boundaries. First and foremost is to have what I stated earlier, reasonably equal populations in each of the 5 districts as required by the US Constitution. In this case, we expect to have approximately 650,000 residents in each district. The process must comply with the 1965 Federal Voting Rights Act to ensure fair representation of all demographics. Thirdly, it must be contiguous, which means in that all parts of the district are connected to each other. Fourth, we must minimize the division of cities, neighborhoods, and communities of interest. And lastly, the districts, must be geographically compact, such that nearby areas of population are not bypassed for more distant populations. This requirement refers to density, not the shape of the district. Next slide, please. So the criteria specific to the County of San Diego is this. The County of San Diego includes 18 incorporated cities. But as you can see on the map, there is a considerable amount of unincorporated territory. So how do we account for that vast amount of unincorporated territory to ensure district populations are reasonably equal? First, at least 3 districts shall include unincorporated territory, at least 3. And secondly, 2 of the districts must be primarily unincorporated areas, at least 2. Next slide. This is a map of District 1. As you can see, there are 5 unincorporated communities, 5 incorporated cities, and a host of neighborhoods within the city of San Diego itself. It extends east of the Pacific Ocean seaboard, north to Otay and San Miguel Mountains, south to Point Loma, south from Point Loma down to the US-Mexico international border. Notably, District 1 includes San Diego Bay, a 23 square mile resource of commerce, ecology, and recreation. Next slide, please. So why does redistricting matter? That number $7.23 billion is a great indication. But plainly put, it is about resources and representation. It is how maps are drawn and how communities and neighborhoods are grouped together or separated. The results of redistricting will affect whose voices are heard on election day for the next decade. When done properly, redistricting ensures that communities have a fair opportunity to elect a representative of their choice. The IRC, your IRC, our IRC, would draw district boundaries for the 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, the governing body of the County of San Diego. They will use the district maps to manage this year's $7.23 billion budget in order to fund and facilitate services such as public health, social services, election services, voter registration, roads, parks, waterways, libraries, law enforcement facilities, support and services, and the detention and treatment facilities. And those are just to name a few. Next slide, please. So how will the County of San Diego Redistricting Commission gather information to redraw the boundaries? First and foremost, we will use the data from the census, and we'll discuss that more later. Secondly, and more importantly, and as Chair Bain said, critically important, we will use public input forums such as this to help us learn about and to understand the communities of interest, your concerns, your considerations. Those are the 2 key elements of how we will draw and redraw the boundaries. Now I'd like to turn the microphone over to my fellow Commissioner Dostal. She will tell us more about the data the IRC will use in drawing the boundaries. Commissioner Dostal.
Thank you, Commissioner Pons. So Commissioner Pons talked about the data we will use. We will use the census data as well as the public input.
Commissioner Dostal, can you hold on? We've got to get you active on the sound system on this end. Hold on. Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you for your patience.
Great. All right. So Commissioner Pons talked about what redistricting is and what criteria we're using in redistricting, the census data, as well as the public input from you to help us learn and understand about communities of interest. So what is a community of interest? Next slide, please. A community of interest, or COI for short, is a contiguous population that shares common social or economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. Communities of interest are not defined by their relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. A community of interest is one that shares common social or economic interests. A COI might coalesce around the fact that it shares a common culture or a common language, for example, but there are many other ways to define a COI. Another example of a COI might be a neighborhood that is adjacent to a shipping port, because that community shares common interests pertaining to dealing with the impacts or effects of having a shipping port as a neighbor. A critical source of information, and perhaps the most critical source about COIs, will necessarily come from the public, from people like you telling us about their COI. The census data will give us some information about neighborhoods and communities, but it won't necessarily tell us about issues and concerns that bring a community together. So how do you know if you belong to a COI? Does your neighborhood share certain celebrations or traditions like street festivals or parades? Are there important places where your community gathers, like parks or community centers? What is the history of how your community came together? Other questions you may ask: are you part of a community who has issues that have not been adequately addressed by your elected representatives? Has your community come together to advocate for important services, better schools, roads, health centers in your neighborhood? Have you worked for more recognition or support of your community, like having holidays recognized or historical events commemorated? For more on all of this, I'd like to introduce our demographer, John McKenzie from Flow Analytics. John?
Yeah, he's coming on the screen now on the
I'm
grid.
here. Thank you. Yes, I had to be made a panelist. So thank you, Commissioner Stahl. Next slide, please. So I'd like to start by just talking a little bit about Flow's role on this project. So as the Redistricting Demographer Services Consultant, our role is to provide demographic and analytical services to the IRC in support of their effort to create a final approved set of supervised rural district boundaries prior to December 15th, 2021. As part of this effort, our team is charged with several specific tasks. We are collecting and compiling the data required for the analysis, and this includes census data, existing boundary data, streets, roads, community of interest boundaries, as well as public comments and testimony. Flow is also providing the mapping software that will be used by the IRC and the public to draw their communities and to draw district map options. And we'll be evaluating those maps as we receive them and reporting that information out to the IRC. As I will discuss in a little more detail later on, we're also overseeing the work of discussed a little earlier. We are overseeing the work of a sub-consultant who will perform a racially polarized voting analysis to ensure that this process complies with the Voting Rights Act. And lastly, we'll be helping the IRC throughout the process with any demographic or analytical requests that come up during the project. Next
John,
slide.
can you hear me? This Liberty?
Yes.
We're having some issues on our side. If you can just hold on. Sorry, commissioners.
Sure thing.
We'll let you know once we're ready.
Got it.
Let me ask colleagues and participants, including virtually, what we've had basically is a breakdown in the system that brings everything online. And I don't want to disadvantage any members of the public in particular who are joining us virtually. So I'm going to beg the indulgence of the members of the public who are here in person to give us just a couple more minutes. I'll beg the indulgence of all the commissioners to stand by and sit tight for just a moment. For those members, Commissioner, do you want to just, well, for those participating virtually and assuming that you can hear me, and I think you can, there is a public hearing survey on our website. And it's always good to read the website multiple times, so I'll go ahead and do that anyway. That's at www.sanDiegoCounty, that's one word, SanDiegoCounty.gov/redistricting. And you'll see that on some of the slides as we work our way through later. But again, SanDiegoCounty.gov/redistricting. That has a survey and comment card in effect. So we can know you're being here. You can also find access to all our presentations, all our slides, upcoming meetings, and even more background and training, frankly, to help you understand what we're about and how this work relates to you, and maybe even get you some resources on matters of interest. My ninth grader is at least finding it useful for his human geography class. Thanks again for your patience.
Yes, ma'am.
Certainly. Oh yeah, no. Yeah, and again, I'm glad you're here. Yeah, go ahead.
first Tuesday of the month at 7 o'clock is not going to be at the fire station. It's going to be at the large community church that's over here on Bonita Road. We'll have a meeting in the sanctuary.
You're muted, David.
Hi, Ken, do you hear me?
I do hear you, Arv.
Well, then the problem's not on our end.
Yeah, that's right. And I see you.
Okay.
There he is.
John, do you want to test your mic?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can. Are we therefore ready to go? Excellent. Thanks again, everyone in the room and participating virtually. John, please go ahead.
Okay. So I would like to talk just a bit about my company, Flow Analytics' role as the redistricting demographer services consultant. So our role in this project is really to provide the demographic and analytical services to the IRC in support of their effort to create a final approved set of supervisorial district boundaries prior to the December 15th, 2021 deadline. As part of the effort, our team is charged with several specific tasks. We're compiling and collecting the data required for the analysis, and this includes the census data, the existing boundary data, streets, roads, communities of interest boundaries, as well as public comments and testimony. Flow is also providing the mapping software that will be used by both the IRC and the public to draw their communities and to draw district map options. And we'll be evaluating those maps as we receive them and reporting that information out to the IRC. As I discussed a little earlier in the special meeting that we had, we are also overseeing the work of a sub-consultant who will perform a racially polarized voting analysis to ensure the process complies with the Voting Rights Act. And lastly, we'll be helping the IRC throughout the process with any demographic or analytical requests that come up during the project. Next slide, please. So as Commissioner Pons mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, something we will, a term that will be used quite a bit is reasonably equal population. So I'd like to speak briefly just about what this really means. So when we talk about reasonably equal population, we're talking about measuring the population balance. And to measure population balance, we first need to identify the total population of the area. So in this case, we're talking about the total population of San Diego County, according to the 2020 census. And we did just receive those numbers. They're not adjusted yet, and I'll explain that, but you will see those numbers briefly. The second value we need to measure population balance is what we refer to as the ideal population. And this is just what the population of each of the 5 supervisorial districts would be if that population were perfectly distributed across districts. And we calculate that ideal population value by simply dividing the county's total population by the number of supervisorial board districts. So it's, in this case, the total population of the county divided by 5. The next step is to determine how much of the population of each district deviates from that ideal population, and we do that as a percentage. So as you can see on the slide here, the way we end up calculating that overall deviation is we sum the percent deviation from the least populated district with the percent deviation of the most populated district. The sum of those two numbers there is the county's total overall deviation. And that's the number that we use to measure population balance. And that's the number that we are trying to get to be as close to 0 as possible. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the unadjusted census data from the PL 94-171 redistricting data summary files that were just released in a legacy format by the census on August 12th. So a couple of things you can notice here is that the county has grown by a little over 200,000 people, and the overall range has increased from 2.7% across the districts in 2010 to 4.5% now. And you heard me mention unadjusted. And so what that means is that these numbers, these enumerations are subject to change based on the statewide database of California's efforts to place the incarcerated population to their last known address. And so we anticipate receiving that data mid to late September, and these numbers will then be updated at that point. But these are the census enumerations as they come from the legacy format, the redistricting data summary files. The next slide, please. So just a quick glance now at a little bit of a more granular level. You can see we did have that total county population change of a little over 200,000, a total percentage change of 6.6%. And the within each district, you can see that the percentage here by which the population changed. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to just very briefly show you our community builder tool. This is the tool that the public can use to draw your communities of interest, to answer some questions about those communities and submit them along with your map. So I'm going to share my screen in just a second here, but I do want to, these materials are available on the redistricting website. And so if you download these, you can simply click on that link that is there in this presentation, and it will take you to the community builder. You can also find a link to the community builder on the redistricting website. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen real quick, and hopefully I can get the right screen this week. And there we go. Okay. So when you go to the community builder website, or sorry, the community builder tool, there is some basic explanation about the redistricting process. And you simply click on a button and then you launch the tool. When you launch the tool, there'll be initially a set of instructions. And there are more detailed instructions about how to use it with this tank. We ask you to fill in some answers to some of the questions that we ask here. This will help us understand sort of the nature of your community of interest, and you can follow the guidelines here as you describe it. There's some categories that we like you to select. And then finally down here, you can see there is a little tutorial showing you how to actually go in and draw your community. So you can watch this animated GIF here, and it will give you a good visual of what you need to do. And then lastly, you draw your communities. So this is just going to actually go to the last community I drew. So I'll just edit this, and if I were to draw a new community, or sorry, if I wanted to draw a community, I can also edit. So you can very easily edit your communities here by dragging along the points in the map, and you can click submit and say it's good and finish, which I probably should have done last time. It would have cleared it out. But it's a pretty standard and basic tool to use. And there's some questions, as we mentioned, for you to answer, and then hit the submit. That data, in terms of the geographic data that you've drawn in the map, as well as the information that you have written into the form, will be sent to the IRC. We will gather that information for them, and we'll go right to the IRC. So we will have that. And lastly, I do want to mention that the Community Builder is available in multiple languages. So you can just click up here at the top to select the appropriate language, and there you go. So with that, I think I am I am finished, and I'll pass it back to Chair Bain.
Can you hear me, Chair Beam?
Very good. John, thank you very much. And I also want to thank Commissioners Tostal and Pons for their part of the presentation as well. It really is an honor to be doing it here in the district where I live as well. And I know both Frank and Lydia feel the same way. To return again to the ways to provide public input on communities of interest, and we can bring that slide back up. One way to do it is to be here today and provide oral testimony, either in person or virtually. Again, we're going to have at least 5 more, and I'm very confident 6 more public hearings throughout the county. Again, to give residents of the county the opportunity to participate in the redistricting process. In addition to providing oral testimony, you can submit written testimony at any time in all the different ways, including even by regular mail, where you do that anarchic idea of putting a piece of paper in an envelope and put a stamp on it and mail it to us. That works fine. We've been getting e-comments tonight during our meeting that are very helpful. And I want to say thanks to those who sent those comments. You can, as John just showed you, draw your community, either using the Community Builder tool or, again, just a hand-drawn map. Obviously, the more detail, the better for us, but it's perfectly fine to give us a hard copy. And again, in all of those, the more you can do that by providing as much detail as possible about your community, about why you should be united in a single district, or other thoughts you have on how those lines should be drawn, the better for us. It just helps us that much more. Next slide, please. So what's the overall process and what else is coming up? As you can see, we're holding public meetings. We're conducting where we are today, the pre-mapping public hearings, the hearings we have before maps are drawn. We'll continue to gather all that public testimony and input so that when data comes out that's in its more final form, as John was referring to, probably in the second half of September, we can start utilizing that data. And as Commissioner Pons explained, combine that with all the community input we've had to start drawing maps. Once we start drawing maps, we return to more public hearings. And those maps will be about maps we've drawn. I'm very optimistic and hopeful and will continue to encourage the public anytime I can, send us maps, because there are examples in the redistricting world nationwide and even in California where the final map was not coming from an initial draft by a commission. It was from a member of the public. And the commission decided that's one we can use. We'll work from that map. I can't see a better way to do public input than to be working from a map submitted by a member of the public. So we will take that just as seriously. In any case, though, we will be drawing maps, we will be collecting input on those maps, and eventually we will adopt a final map. Let me just note about that final map. We are an independent commission. That's what the I is for in IRC. We are citizen volunteers. We operate completely independently from the influence of our elected officials, and we're responsible only to you, the public, in our duty to draw fair and accurate maps for the county. That final map that we draw is in place and adopted once we approve it. The County Board of Supervisors has no role in approving that map. That's under law. And for me, that's a very reassuring point of our civic life here. It gives us the ability to decide as citizens. And by us, I mean members of the public, not just this commission, because as Commissioner Pons and Commissioner Dostal explained, this is your commission, our commission, collectively, the entire county's commission. So that final map is the final map, and that's what will support the election lines for the next decade. Next slide. You see here the schedule for our pre-mapping public hearings, the next of which is August 26th, next Thursday at 5:30 p.m. at the Ronald Reagan Community Center in El Cajon. And you can see the other meetings that are scheduled, including a couple Saturday meetings, including one on September 18th, where we're still getting the location right, but it will almost certainly be a coastal location somewhere west of Interstate 5. And again, this presentation and the entire schedule is posted on our website. Next slide, please. I should have noted, though, on that slide, something I said earlier. you'll notice that there's one in each of the districts as we work through, in addition to other slides as well. All right. Now, the redistricting timeline. Where are we and what's to come? Again, tonight is the first of what we currently anticipate or today's the second of what we currently anticipate to be 8 public hearings. That is at the bottom diamond. You can see August 18th in the PMPH phase. So gotta love acronyms, right? And abbreviations. Last week, as John mentioned, on August 12th, the U.S. Census Bureau released raw data to the states. That data is currently being processed by the state to create California's official redistricting database that you see up in the green circle on the top in towards the center. That is anticipated sometime in the second half of September. All the dates on here are tentative. And we've already heard that that September 23rd date may actually be a tiny bit earlier. We'll see. But certainly by September 23rd, I think we still expect to see that data. Once that data is released, so we can start drawing boundaries, we enter that blue line drawing phase in early October. And that's where we begin drawing draft maps and receiving maps, we hope, from the public. Each draft map will be published with the relevant data and made available for public comment, the ones that we offer. And we'll have at least 2 public hearings during this map drawing phase. I'll explain why it's at least 2 and more on whether we'll be able to fit another one in. The reason for that really is that statement on the far right. The current deadline for us to adopt a final map is December 15th. So if you try to map out, so to speak, that early October to mid-December timeframe, we should be able to get 2 public hearings in. I'm going to be optimistic that we can get another 1 or 2 in. We are required by law to have 2, but we, again, want to have as much public discussion and input on those maps as possible. So more to follow on that as we get closer. Again, that deadline, while it is enshrined in law right now, is under active discussion. And there are various things going on in the legislature. There is a Supreme Court case involving the California State Commission that may have implications for us in our deadline and that may move that deadline out. Why is all this so tentative? You may have heard in connection with the census data being delayed in the first place by a number of factors, not the least of which was COVID-19. It was just very hard for the census workers and analysts to do their job, and that's had an impact on how the deadlines have been set and how the deadlines have been adjusted. Typically, census data would have arrived by April, and we frankly would be finishing our work by about now. That would have been a typical census and redistricting 2-year cycle. Instead, the census released raw data on August 12th, and that initial delay resulted in an extension already adopted for our final map to be adopted to December 15th. That's where that came from. But again, it's subject to change. So the short answer on all this, the short summary on all this is stay tuned. Our priority is to ensure that the public has ample opportunity to participate in the redistricting process and to ensure we have the time we need to gather all the information to draw fair and accurate maps. We will continue to push for the maximum time we can get and to preserve the time that was originally envisioned for public input. We have stated publicly to the Redistricting Commission and to the State Redistricting Commission and others that our preference would be a map adoption deadline of January 14th, which would get us not only through the holiday period, but past the holiday period for further discussion and development of maps. That is not approved yet. I don't know if it'll be approved. So we are working under the assumption that we need to work from that December 15th date. If I have to summarize that, please help us to help you by providing as much input today at our other pre-mapping hearings and at the hearings once maps are being drawn and drafted and distributed. All this gives us some additional time to learn about the county, to learn about communities of interest, and learn about what's important to members of the public. The fact that we have some more time on this front end because the data has been delayed does help because it gives us some more chances to hear from the public. And we have heard from the public. All right, next slide, please. let me remind you that we're the San Diego County Independent Redistricting Commission. Our focus is on the elections and the election lines, the district lines for the Board of Supervisors. There are other redistricting efforts occurring simultaneously across the region, across the state of California, and indeed across the country. Other entities are considering boundaries of districts for local city councils, for other jurisdictions, for state and congressional representatives, only some of which are led by independent commissions like the IRC, but all of which are collecting public input. Last week's release of data is timely, not only for our commission, for county residents interested in broader redistricting at all these different levels. Our colleagues in the California Citizens Redistricting Commission, the CRC, the state level commission that you see at the top, are actually holding a virtual public hearing tomorrow, August 19th at 4 p.m. And you can see the website, wedrawthelines.ca.org/meetings, where you can get more information on how to participate in that meeting. That state commission, again, is focused on drawing the lines for electing members of the U.S. House of Representatives, the California State Senate, the California State Assembly, and the Board of Equalization. In addition, the city of San Diego, rather than the county, that's us, but our colleagues at the City of San Diego Redistricting Commission have a meeting on August 19th, tomorrow at 3 p.m. And also a District 8 special meeting is listed on the slide on August 24th. Their website is listed as well. Please feel free to look on that. City of Chula Vista is having a redistricting meeting tomorrow, August 19th at 5:30 p.m. Their websites are listed. The City of Escondido will have a redistricting meeting for its city on August 24th at 5 p.m. And the City of Carlsbad will have 2 informational sessions for District 1 on August 25th, District 2 on August 26th, and their website is listed. So I hope all that helps anyone interested in participating in any other parts of the process. Again, please feel free to contact us. Our staffs are working fairly well together. I think it's fair to say, Barbara, good. And we're in touch so that we make sure if there is an inquiry made to us that's actually for the City of San Diego's commission, our staff gets that in touch. And we are actively exploring ways to step up that kind of cooperation and coordination. Next slide, please. So once again, different ways to participate, to help. That community builder tool, John gave you the detailed website, but the easy one is san-diego-county.gov redistricting, an easy way to draw maps and see what they look like and what they do. Public meetings, pre-mapping public hearings like we're having tonight, as well as our regular public meetings that we have every 2 weeks. Our next one is a week from tomorrow, Thursday, the 26th. We'll talk about that in a little while as well. You can subscribe at the website as well. We've got a QR code. You can also submit to the mailing address at the Pacific Highway Building or on email at redistricting@sdcounty.ca.gov. We also have Twitter, Facebook, and other social media accounts. So please feel free to utilize any and all of those. I'll ask to leave that slide up on this screen for a moment. That's our overview presentation. I thank you for your patience and for putting up with the delay on our technical requirements. I want to thank staff for getting that solved reasonably fast. It was, I think, a little more complex than we understood, but we're there. So now we get to the heart of the meeting, to listen to you. Let me ask our clerk, Ryan Sharp, to tell us about how we'll proceed and to organize our proceedings so that members of the public can participate. Ryan.
Thank you, Chair Boehm. We have 2 speakers who have requested to address the commission in person and 2 speakers who have requested to address the commission virtually and or by phone through Zoom. I will also check members of the public requesting to speak at today's meeting by raising a physical or virtual hand. I will also note that we received 11 e-comments for this item that were distributed to the commission and posted online. Each speaker on this item will have 3 minutes to address the commission. We will begin by calling in-person speakers who have submitted a request to speak form. When your name is called, please proceed to the podium and state your name for the record. If you choose into the microphone before beginning your comments, you'll see or hear a timer then when your time is up. So the first speaker I have, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name ahead of time, is Michael Saylor. Seiler. Thank you, Michael.
Well, first of all, thanks for making the time to get down here. I appreciate your task ahead is pretty much like trying to push a rope up a hill. There's a lot of stuff to consider. I would have much liked a pre-briefing copy online. I hope you'll put them online so we can help digest a little bit of that information you're providing. The tool for drawing our community, I'm not sure what the value added of that would be, because it seems like our District 1 is sort of in the southwest of the county. We will either draw from District 4, which is above to the north of us, or District 2, if we are going to be number-wise leveled out with the other districts. I wasn't sure, I couldn't copy the slide that was put up relative to the district and the other demographics that were considered. I would be concerned that you definitely definitely exclude the politics. I did kind of get wind from the briefing by the the FLO group that they might be considering politics. Maybe I just misheard that. I hope I did. But certainly socioeconomic factors need to be considered. They need to have an appropriate weight so that even though the populations may be the same, socioeconomics can sometimes mean people will come out to vote or won't come out to vote. That's something that's kind of hard to discern from strictly monetary income and other persuasions, but that is something that needs to be considered, I believe. Other than that, I won't really take up any more time. I appreciate you being down here and look forward to your endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jesus Gallegos Lunos. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name as well.
Thank you very much. You pronounced it correctly. Again, thank you very much for holding this event. I think it is very important that our communities know about redistricting, and a lot of the people for where I come from do not know about this. I live in District 1. I live in the Otay Mesa San Isidro community. I am a college student, but a lot of the individuals in my community do not have access to these kinds of presentations. So I would really appreciate if we could also do these kinds of events down in San Isidro, Chula Vista, National City area as well. As mentioned, my name is Jesus Martin Gallegos Munoz. I would like to state that the communities of interest that should remain contiguous in District 1 are San Isidro, Chula Vista, National City, Imperial Beach, and Barrio Logan. These communities share within many of them mentioned a common language being Spanish, a common ethnicity being either Latinx, Hispanic, Chicano, or Asian and Pacific Islander, and a common identity being immigrant, refugee, or first or second generation American, which I believe is very important that these communities stay together. I also believe that the city of Coronado should not be included in District 1 for it does not share any of the factors mentioned, and to mention as well as Michael, I believe mentioned, socioeconomic status is very important, and I believe that Coronado has a different socioeconomic status compared to those of National City, Chula Vista, San Isidro, and the other. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we will move to virtual and phone testimony. For those that are logged into the Zoom session, we will first open it up to speakers who have submitted an online request to speak form. I will call virtual and phone speakers by name or by the last 4 digits of their phone number. And for those who have called in, you will see or hear a notification in Zoom that you have been unmuted. For the telephone callers, you will need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each speaker is asked to state their name if you choose to do so before beginning your comments. You'll see or hear a timer when your time is up. So I did have 2 speakers requested. I am no longer seeing them online, but I am going to call out the names just in case they are under a different name. First speaker would be Holly Late. Could you please raise your hand or press *6 or *9 on your phone to raise your hand? Not seeing any movement. I'll move to the next speaker, who is May Case. Please press *9 on your phone or raise your virtual hand. And go ahead and press *6 on your phone to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, great. Hi, thank you. My name's Holly Late, and I am a resident of Carlsbad, and I also work in Oceanside. I have a really good understanding of both cities, and I feel like you need to understand that North County has a distinct and separate identity that has developed over many decades. We're definitely a community of interest, and it's more important that we have one district supervisor to represent both cities and the unincorporated communities of North County. Oceanside is a great example. We have miles of beachfront, an older but now revitalizing urban core, dense housing in many neighborhoods, and a rural farming community on the northeastern side of the city. Carlsbad and Oceanside are definitely connected, but so are Oceanside and Vista, Oceanside and Bonsall, and Oceanside and Fallbrook. As a Carlsbad resident, I know that the city is also a mix of beachfront and suburban and rural. We have large housing communities, but we also have large farms, including some of the big historic strawberry farms in North County. I think what unites these communities, the cities, and the unincorporated areas is a strong sense of being residents of North County, not San Diego, not East County, not South Bay. We are North County. And I feel we are all very fortunate to live in a county with distinct areas. I urge you to please respect our community of interest. Please maintain a unified North County represented by one county supervisor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Last call for May Case. Seeing no hands up, that would bring us back to in person. And I'd like to open the floor at this time, and I'd like to give an opportunity for anyone else who is attending in person to speak to the commission. Are there any member of the public who have not submitted a request to speak form that wish to address the commission? If so, please come forward to the podium and state your name for the record. If you choose to do so, you will also have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Thank you. My name is Judy Tieber, and I'll give you my form when I'm done. What I would like to do is follow up on this young man. He made excellent points. And what my husband and I have always liked about Bonita is the diversity. Just on our street, we have Filipino, we have Black, we have Caucasian, we have any number of other ethnicities, and we all get along and we all appreciate what each person brings to the table. And I believe that that is a very strong point for Bonita and why we should maintain our closeness to Chula Vista and to the border area. The other thing I want to say is economically, whether we like it or not, we are attached to Chula Vista at the hip. Our business district, our stores are pretty much all within the city of Chula Vista boundaries. And we use those facilities. They are main facilities for Bonita, as well as the parks. So I think it is important that we remain in whatever district Chula Vista is going to be in. I also believe a natural boundary is the Highway 54 to the north. And I think I would now want to see our area split with part of our district south and part north. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Charmina Stolano, and I'm from District 1. I've been a longtime resident of Bonita. I have a question as opposed to a comment, and it is for Flow Analytics. And my question is does the mapping have the capabilities of beeping us if we draw a map inappropriately, not including the criteria that was in, I believe, slide 3, where each certain districts have to have 2 unincorporated. So my question is, does the map help us draw those lines? And if they're inappropriate and don't meet the criteria, will they be rejected so that we can go back and retool the map? And that's my question.
Thank you for that, Ryan. I'm just going to jump in here because the question relates to some other things that have been asked, I think, about how much dialogue we're allowed to have in this. And I'm afraid we're going to have to give the answer that I certainly wouldn't want to because of the structure of the discussion. Let me turn to our counsel, Marguerite or Hillary, just to confirm. For this public hearing, we are only allowed to hear from the public and collect that input. Is that correct?
I can't see if Hillary has jumped in. Generally, in a public hearing, there's not an agendized item for discussion, and you can receive the public input and certainly ask clarifying questions, but it's not an opportunity for discussion or resolution.
So to be fair to all members of the public, what I'm going to ask is to beg your indulgence. We have a regular meeting of our commission next Thursday, and I'm going to talk to staff and council about how we can respond to some of the comments that were made and address some of the questions that were asked to make sure you're at least getting responses to what you're talking about, what you're asking about, what you think you may have heard, but may not have been exactly what was heard. And I appreciate the omission of that. And in the meantime, please feel free to be in touch with our staff who can receive those kind of direct questions. And in certain categories, especially on the technical side, maybe even able to offer an even faster response. The reason is not that we're trying to be difficult. The reason is that under the Brown Act, we have to be as transparent and clear as possible with the public, including the opportunity for equal attention to their concerns. And so if I was to change the rules for this meeting, it could disadvantage some members of the public beyond what we should appropriately do. So it's not to say we're ignoring your concerns in any way. In fact, I can tell you, I've got several commissioners who would like to speak right now, but I have to maintain that adherence to the Brown Act and direct it to our regular meeting. But that said, and I think several of the commissioners can confirm this, we will find a way to be responsive and to have that kind of dialogue and to make sure your comments and concerns and questions are being addressed. Yeah.
Marguerite, thank you for replying to that question. Just to clarify, are we permitted to address comments that do not involve the line drawing process? So, for example, one of the comments, someone made mention of more public appearances in other areas. Is that something we can talk about? Because that doesn't strike me as material or relevant to actual map drawing, and it's more of an administrative matter. Is that something that we can clarify or provide more information on at the moment?
Marguerite, either you're muted or we're muted on our end.
Commissioner Servin, you can certainly ask a clarifying question. Where would you recommend that these hearings occur? I heard Otay Mesa, but at this time, it is not on the agenda for the commission to discuss scheduling additional hearings. That can certainly be on the agenda for a meeting a week from now. but I think you should feel free to make sure you understand the import of the comment and to ask a follow-up question. And then at an upcoming meeting, those issues can be brought forth under the appropriate agenda item.
Okay, I understand. Thank you, Council.
And I'll add to that, it is certainly in order for a member of the public who wants to clarify what they said with more specific detail, or having had a chance to review the meeting, a more specific question, by sending that to us, either through staff or at our regular meeting. So it's a long way of saying we'll try to do all we can. Let me return to the regular order. Ryan, we're still available to take public input and public comment, even if it hasn't been requested quite yet, if members of the public want to talk.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bame. If there's any other members of the public in person that would like to comment, please feel free to go to the podium. We also have a request from Harriet Taylor. Thank you as well. So if anybody else would like to speak, please go to the podium and line up. Thank you very much.
I'll hand in my card in
Thank
2
you.
seconds. My name is Karen Schneider. I'm also a relatively newbie. I've only been here 25 years in Bonita. Comment. Someone has asked a clarifying question. They haven't asked for an input. They haven't asked for an opinion. That issue is probably asked by many people. So it might be a great one to put on your frequently asked questions, which then allows it to be viewed by the masses and thus meet your government requirements. I work in government. So that would be my comment on that absolutely excellent, intelligent question. Second, also a comment that, again, as a newbie in Bonita to California, to right here, I found we chose to live here because this area has a history that belongs part of Chula Vista, part of our Tijuana border. If you go back to the early areas, we have the Bonita Museum. If you ever get a chance to go in there, it talks about the incredible bandwidth that we have in this larger District 1 area. Some of the others outlined may be different. They might like to come in here. I certainly understand the way the number game's played, but this does indeed have a COI that meets that requirement, our early agricultural, how we work together and how we develop things. So I believe that's another issue that we can add in as to why this little unincorporated, which is one of those requirements to come over to District 1, also has a very strong cultural and heritage that grew up over the years. We didn't pop up just on the edges. We were there right from the beginning, even with the beginning of Chula Vista. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Harriet to the podium.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us in Bonita. I'm Harriet Taylor. I totally agree with what Judy said and the young gentleman over here by maintaining who we are now, because we all like who we are here. And we live, as far as what I've always called, we're the jewel of the first district, and we are the only child, as being the only unincorporated area. So we're privileged, and we want to we're special. We all are different individuals, and we don't always agree, but we love living here, and we are trying to maintain our community before Chula Vista tried to run us over. That failed, thank God, in '69. And so just please keep in mind, my biggest concern, and yes, I'm co-chair of the planning group here, is potentially losing some of our boundaries, because we are a small community, and I can guarantee you no one in this community wants to be living in Chula Vista. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd offer one more time if anybody that's in person would like to speak, to please go to the podium. Not seeing any movement. Well, that will conclude in-person public comment. Would at this time like to give an opportunity for anyone else participating virtually or by phone to raise a virtual hand if you'd like to speak to the commission. I will call you by name or your number. You will hear or see a notification in Zoom that you've been unmuted. For the telephone callers, you will need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each speaker is asked to state their name if you choose to do so. Before beginning your comments, you'll see or hear when your timer is up. Chair Bame, I'm not seeing any virtual hands go up, so I would say that concludes public comment virtually.
And therefore, that's both components of public input and comment.
Public input is completed. Thank you, Chair
Very
Bame.
good.
So if I may, I'd like to ask a clarifying question of Jesus. I'm sorry, I didn't get your last name. You mentioned that the communities that you're in don't have a lot of access to these types of hearings. When you and you suggested maybe holding additional hearings or other things like that. Did you mean like public hearings like this, or did you mean more of like an education and outreach sort of event where we talk about like what we're doing and why we're doing it and that kind of thing? Which one did you have in mind? All right, thank you.
And not that we engage in groupthink too often, but I had actually just written a note to myself that in my closing comments, I should also remind that on our website, there is a request a commissioner, a request to invite a speaker. It's actually, I think, how we had our meeting with the Sweetwater Community Planning Group, which is a wonderful evening for me. And I very much encourage you to talk to staff about that. And I promise you there almost certainly will be interest. And that same message is for anyone participating tonight, virtually or in public. I can't tell you how enthusiastic all 14 commissioners are about looking for opportunities to speak to the public, to educate, to hear concerns, and especially now that there's some data to actually discuss, I think we'd be more than interested. I would also reiterate something we've said as a continuing topic in our regular meetings, but will be a little more intensified. We do have it within our mission to reach hard to reach people, hard to reach groups, people who don't have the opportunity to come to a public hearing or don't have the internet access to follow a meeting at length. And as we saw tonight, even when you have internet access, that doesn't mean it will work smoothly. So we are actively talking among ourselves and in our public meetings about how we might reach out to those groups and populations and communities more often, or at least have a chance to educate them about what we're doing and hear from them about what they think. But of course, we're not the sole wisdom in that. There's a lot of wisdom out there on how to reach out to other groups. So please be in touch with us through all the different channels we had explained earlier. With that, I want to thank all members of the public who joined us here tonight. I want to thank those who joined us virtually. I want to thank those who offered e-comments during the meeting, which is always good to see. And to assure you, we will be taking all that input very seriously and looking at it. And in all likelihood, I think discussing it in a future meeting quite soon. That said, the IRC has a very important responsibility to draw the lines for the elections to the Board of Supervisors, and we simply can't do that without your help and input. We need to hear the kind of feedback, the kind of description, the kind of passionate commitment you have to your communities, and we really do appreciate that, and we look forward to hearing even more. Again, before you leave, please make sure if you're here to drop a survey card either in the box or with our staff. If you're participating virtually, please fill it out through the online survey or input that you can find on the website. Just to note again, our next public hearing will be Thursday, August 26th at 5:30 p.m. next Thursday. in the Ronald Reagan Community Center, 195 East Douglas Avenue in El Cajon. Zip code is 92020. I want to make clear the time and explain again where we are here. We are combining that with our regular bi-weekly meeting of the Independent Redistricting Commission. That regular meeting will start at 4 p.m. But wherever we are in our agenda, we will suspend around 5:15, 5:20 and have the public hearing at 5:30 and then do what we're going to do tonight. Once the public hearing is done, we'll return to the regular meeting. For those purposes, though, I want to adjourn this public hearing again with gratitude and thanks. Ma'am? Can you go to the microphone, please? So, I'm sorry to ask.
Hi, I just needed to know the time and location of the Spring Valley meeting. It was the 25th.
Somebody have that handy?
It's 8735 Hamashah Boulevard, Spring Valley, California, 91977. And the time is 1 p.m. on September 25th, Saturday.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
There's some cards like this on the desk that have all the information.
Great. Clarifying answers. I love it. It's good. All right. So just a preview for commissioners. We're going to adjourn the public hearing in just a moment. We'll take, I think, a 5-minute break if staff's amenable to that. And then we'll return to the special meeting and the agenda item on special counsel. With that, and with great thanks once again, I adjourn this public hearing at 7:26 p.m.
I wanted
Ma'am.
to get a count of the e-comments that came in.
Sorry?
for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is my mistake.
For the record,
I don't-
how many
please.
comments did you get?
Go ahead. Commissioner
Oh.
Diaz.
For the record, how many e-comments did we receive total
During the meeting?
during the meeting, from before to during the meeting to now?
There were 11 total e-comments received
During the meeting.
from before to the end, 11,
Okay.
11 total.
Before this meeting ever happened, so that, or is that, just wanted clarification.
Prior to the meeting, I was notified that we received 9 e-comments. 2 additionals received during the meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. So we're adjourned at 7:26. I'll stick with that. Please be back, commissioners, at 7:31 on your clocks. Thanks very much.
So.
Okay, commissioners, including those participating virtually, if you can start coming back, and we'll try to start in just a minute.
I saw that, Ken.
Okay. Touch. Sure, Serban.
He's out there talking
Good.
to someone right now.
Oh, okay. Okay, so as we come back into session, by my clock, we're reconvening the special meeting at 7:39. I think we've got everybody back who was participating, or at least most of them. So I think the best way to proceed right now is to put the draft motion back on the screen. Thank you. That language that's underlined, I think, is the language Commissioner Hanson was just offering. Good. I will ask the mover and the second if it's acceptable now to put that language in. And I'm afraid I don't have my record clear. I should, but I didn't write it down.
I was the move, Anton.
Sure.
And
Yes.
Commissioner Serban and Commissioner Pons were the motioner and seconder.
Great. Are you okay adding this language to the motion?
I would just ask the Commissioner Hanson, so what would that mean when we say we're moving forward in the process of deciding whether or not to retain special counsel? What is that?
Because we were concerned before because it sounded like a decision to retain, which we're not ready to make until we've had a chance to actually work through the draft work of statement of work. So instead of saying we're going to retain, I suggest we say we're going to move forward in the process of deciding whether or not to retain. It's just not the affirmative decision to retain yet.
Okay, so are we asking to obtain a final statement of work? Is that what moving forward in the process means? Prior to retaining, in order to decide whether to retain special counsel, are we saying we need a final statement of work?
We need to review the statement of work and agree to accept that before we agree to retain someone.
Okay, let me offer to proceed as follows. I have Co-Vice Chair Garcia and Commissioner Chen requesting to speak. Let us take those two commissioners, and then I'll ask Commissioner Serban and Commissioner Pons to consider language like this or something else that either accomplishes this mission or to simply say they'd rather proceed with the motion as is. But let me ask Co-Vice Chair Garcia first, and then Commissioner Chen. Rosette, please.
Thank you, David. So I just want to make a few comments and then possibly offer a friendly amendment to the motion. I think it might be worth going through a little bit what our thought process was as when we brought this item back to the commission. And it was based on our last conversation at our last meeting when we talked about special counsel. And commissioners asked for more information. And it was actually quite frankly surprising to me that one of the things that was not clear to all of the commissioners, it seemed like we had not reached consensus on whether or not we needed special counsel. And so that was one of the questions. Do we really need special counsel? Why do we need special counsel? And thank you to Marguerite for tonight, I think providing strong rationale for why we need special counsel. And Chris for pointing out the fact that we actually have a gap in our legal coverage, if you will, because we don't currently have legal counsel that can provide us interpretation of the RPV analysis that we've just tonight decided to hire a subcontractor to provide that analysis to us. It's important information. So number one, do we need special counsel? Why do we need special counsel? What's the rationale for that? And so one of the things that we were thinking is that that was sort of the first order of business, is reaching consensus around that question. And then the second question that commissioners had last time was, how much will it cost? What are the budgetary implications? What are the financial implications for that? And we heard tonight, and actually we heard a little bit more in depth from Marguerite in the previous meeting setting the agenda for tonight, that the number looks to be at around $60,000. And we heard from Nicole that, and thanks to the budget ad hoc committee, that they had the foresight and the planning to actually allocate funds for special counsel, because we were advised early on in the process that special counsel was probably a very wise route for us. So they've allocated, we already have allocated in the budget $50,000. What we heard tonight was that actually the number might be $60,000. And again, thanks to Commissioner Chen, Chris, if you don't mind, he's suggesting that we need to have a not to exceed number in the motion. So, and actually I agree with that. I like that idea. And then there's been a lot of conversation about what's the process. And so the thought was that tonight what we would do is determine that we have consensus around hiring special counsel. And then the next steps would be process, because there's actually a lot of information that could not be gathered in time to provide to the commission about process and how we actually bring that special counsel on. And I just want to remind everybody that we moved forward on the other consultants that we've already brought on, and we made the decision. We actually voted on the RFP after that. So that was we did that separately. We voted on the RFP, and the ad hoc committees worked on that RFP, and they brought that to the commission, and then we decided on the RFP, but we'd already decided that those consultants were going to come on. So my friendly amendment to the motion would be to say that we move that the commission retain special counsel for an amount not to exceed $60,000, and to provide the services that we believe we're going to need to be confident that and that doesn't have to go in the motion, but to be confident that the maps that we're drawing are, meet legal muster. Thank you, Commissioner Bain.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chen.
So part of the move forward process for me, Commissioner Serban, you asked what would it include. To me, a critical thing would include is a final statement of work with a cost estimate, or, if we're moving in the direction of having Marguerite just add this to her contract, which is what it sounds like we're doing, we could just ask her to provide us with a proposal with a statement of work and a price, and then we can vote yes or no on that. So that to me would be one way to move forward with this, is to get that, ask for that from Marguerite, just provide us a hard statement of work with a price.
If
Okay,
I might,
I'm-
I think that.
I'd rather not right now, because I offered to the mover and the seconder to let them react to the inputs. I do see Co-Vice Chair Katerina had her hand up. Is this related to refining the motion, Amy, or is it more general comment? Because I'd like to give them
No, it's a
chance to refine the
secondary
motion
comment.
first.
Yeah, it can wait. I'll
Okay.
leave it up, but it can wait.
Okay, so let me turn back. Co-Vice Chair Garcia, did you want to refine the language you were suggesting a bit, or?
Sure.
Okay.
A friendly amendment to this motion, that the commission move to retain special counsel to perform legal services in an amount not to exceed $60,000.
I offered the mover and the seconder first, so I want to be responsive to that. Commissioner Serban or Pons, do you have any reaction to that, or to the other things that were said?
Yes. My reaction is this. I just think that first and foremost, to Commissioner Garcia's point, that yes, special counsel is needed. I think we understand that and we appreciate that. And so the answer to that first question is yes. I think the contract to be written can be shaped to include a not to exceed amount and to modify any other additions to the statement of work, adding or subtracting from that statement of work. And I do not agree with changing the motion that it was presented initially. I think it was straightforward. I think we're adding too much into it when we start adding not to exceed amounts. I think that's part of the contract negotiation process, but I think it can be included in that process, but not in the motion.
Commissioner Serban.
So it strikes me as the two things that remain at issue isn't a question of whether, as Commissioner Pons said, whether we think it's sensible for us to retain special counsel. It seems as if we're heading in that direction. The two questions before us or the two concerns seem to be the draft nature of the statement of work, as well as the uncertainty as to the final price of this contract. I think I'm in agreement with Commissioner Pons in thinking that I think we just need to decide whether or not we want this or not. And then if it's and by this, what I mean is special counsel, retaining special counsel to perform work that's substantially in conformance with the draft statement of work that's been presented to us. I think that's the question before us, and we can answer that tonight.
All right. I want to respect everyone's time, especially for a special meeting, and especially because we are undoubtedly going to come back to this. The options in my mind are a little broader than that level. It is, if I'm understanding the conversation correctly, I might even suggest the words to approve in principle the retention of special counsel, comma, with a tasking to, could be staff, could be council, could be a combination of them, could be an ad hoc committee, could be the officers, the chair and the co-vice chairs, to detail the process and, as Rosette said, the process, statement of work, and other key components for making a final decision. And we could add the word budget there. What I think we would be best served by in a motion tonight is one that would enshrine that we want to retain special counsel, because I haven't heard any opposition to that. And I would strongly invite commissioners who don't like the idea to speak up now. But if there is agreement that we should retain special counsel, to have enough guidance in the motion that at least staff and council can start working on some of the details. including the statement of work, but also including the budget and any other aspects that would seem relevant. How much that is just a staff council exercise and how much that requires commissioner input is a topic for discussion. Let me turn to Co-Vice Chair Katerina.
Dang it, I forgot what I was going to say.
My strategy worked.
I think we just need to have a plan to move forward. And so I'm in support of figuring out a motion that will help us do that.
Okay, excellent. Commissioner Chen, then Commissioner Hanson.
So I am in favor in principle, but I'm not in favor of at any cost. That's why I think if I had a statement of work, the hard statement of work that was contractual in nature or will be contractual in nature, and a cost that ensures we stay in budget, I would be in favor. I think if it's open-ended, I would not be. So you asked me to voice my opinion now, that's it.
Nope, that's helpful. That's helpful. Okay, so if I'm reading the hands right, Commissioner Hanson, then Commissioner Diaz, then Co-Vice Chair Garcia. Am I missing anyone? Good. Please, Commissioner Hanson.
We have a motion and we have an amendment on the floor. I think we need to move forward with what we have, or else we need to withdraw those before we continue to discuss the possibility of revising it more.
Okay. Commissioner Diaz. I think you're muted, Commissioner Diaz.
I agree with Commissioner Hanson here. We have a motion on the floor. If we're going to add an amendment, I can entertain an amendment if that's appropriate at this time. I did like the way it was worded before. I feel that the current amendment as it stands, it doesn't really express what you were earlier trying to say about moving forward in retaining special counsel, because that's it. That's what was originally proposed. So I want to go back to the original motion, if that is appropriate, and vote on that. Or I don't know if we're expected to vote on this new one, and then, or if I could do a substitute motion.
The point's well taken. I promise we'll come back to you, but let me ask staff if we can put up the original motion again, especially given that's what the mover and the seconder said. And let me turn to Co-Vice Chair Garcia.
Yeah, I had other comments to make, but I guess the one I want to make right now is that we have in our budget a certain amount, and I think that will constrain us. I hope that will reassure Commissioner Chen that we can't just go out, I think, and spend as much money. I believe that the budget that we've approved also provides some guardrails or constraints upon the commission. So whether we put that in the motion or not, I appreciate what Commissioner Pond said. And the only other, I want to make sure that I understood Commissioner Chen, because I think it's two different things to say we're going to retain special counsel, or we're going to expand our general counsel's contract to provide this expertise to us. And it's my it's my position that we actually need independent counsel. We need a separate set of eyes, and that's actually what we've been advised to do, is to bring in special counsel and not to use our existing counsel to provide this expertise to us. So I just want to make sure that, we can just vote on this motion. And I prefer to vote on the original motion as well.
Let me go to Commissioner Inman, and then I think come back to Commissioner Diaz, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. So question to you, actually, Chair Graham. If we vote on this and it passes, is your intent then to detail a process that will bring back a final statement of work for review by the commission? Is that what happens if this passes?
That would certainly be my intent. And the reason I thought putting this motion on the screen for tonight would be enough to get that process started. We do have time, but I do want to get work started on the details. And I think this motion, as written, provides just enough guidance, given the draft statement of work, and that key word draft being in there.
Okay.
We cannot proceed with a special counsel without a final and approved statement of work. So this gets us started from that draft and gives, for me, the commission the possibility to refine and change that statement of work, and then other process and substantive points that result from that, including the budget.
Okay, so that clarifies my question.
Is the goal? Yeah.
Yeah.
The goal is to kick off the process.
Okay. Then I would be in support of the motion as stated. So thank you.
Okay. And just to clarify, because we've been doing so many things at last minute and not having things in front, if we don't have this ready for the agenda package to go out for the meeting on the 26th, we won't have this on the agenda for the 26th. And some of that depends on what the commission's feeling is about commissioner involvement in that process between now and the next meeting where we discuss it, and how much is just staff and council working as a more routine process. All right, let me take Commissioner Diaz and then Commissioner Henson. Sonia, please.
Oh, no, I didn't. lower
Okay.
my-
Nope, that's great. I'm sorry. Thank you for that. Commissioner Henson?
I just want to clarify the comments that Commissioner Diaz made about the amendment. The reason the amendment differs from this motion is because this motion says we will retain. The amendment changes that to say we will continue the process of deciding whether or not to retain. That's the difference. And I think we have to vote on the amendment according to Robert's rules before we vote on the original motion.
There's a complicating factor when it's an amendment that the movers have not taken. But we can certainly proceed along that line if that's the sense of the commission. I want to be careful not to extend the discussion too long. What I do want to see, though, at this point, as I asked earlier, are there any commissioners who oppose retaining special counsel in general? Now, I'm not saying that if you don't speak up, that means you're ready to retain special counsel right now, and we'll just figure out the terms later. That's not what I'm really saying. What I'm really trying to find out is there opposition to the idea of special counsel? Commissioner Henson.
Well, I would agree with Commissioner Chen, within reason, within budgetary definitions, within the amount of money available to us, and if the statement of work demonstrates the need. I mean, I agree with the need absolutely in principle, but the statement of work and the contractual offer has to also meet our needs.
Commissioner Sherman.
So my question is, are we able to enter into a contract for which we don't have the budget?
At a basic level, no.
Okay.
And there are also contractual procedures that are important in this case, because there are multiple ways to do this some of which we don't even know yet. Barbara, I still want to find a way for staff to work 36 hours a day, not 24 hours a day. But until we have that, there is a need for time to develop this. I would compare it, though, a little bit to the RPV situation, where there was a certain mandate for flow analytics, but there was a requirement for a change in the budget, and that's where the commission was able to exercise its authority. I think one of the fundamental questions is whether the draft statement of work is clear enough to start a process for review. I would invite commissioners to comment on the statement of work that you've seen and whether that would be sufficient. Now, let me try to be fair here. I've got Co-Vice Chair Garcia, Commissioner Diaz, Commissioner Hanson. Any other commissioners at this point? And I am cognizant of the time. Commissioner Larson. Okay, Co-Vice Chair Garcia.
Actually, Sonia had her hand up before me, so please, Sonia.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry about that. Commissioner Diaz.
Thank you for recognizing me. Looking at the draft statement of work as is, I think it includes all of the basic components, but realizing that it's a draft and that the commission can also play a part in drafting that, I believe that, we can move forward with that. I mean, I guess, what I would like to recommend is if there's a budgetary concern, which I'm hearing that from other commissioners, is it plausible that we add the word in this motion right now that says that the commission retain special counsel within the budgetary requirements as approved, that the budget as we essentially approved as a commission, as it fulfills those requirements to perform the legal services relative to the draft and final. So that's what I would add. And it kind of mirrors a little bit of what Commissioner Garcia was trying to get at earlier. But instead of putting not to exceed a certain amount, just adding that word within reasonable budgetary requirements as set forth by the commission. That includes the budget we approved.
And this may be, please finish your thought. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that was all I had to say. That's what I would recommend.
And this may be a mistake on my part in interpreting it. I consider those principles that you just laid out, Commissioner Diaz, inherent in anything we do to talk about the budget. The challenge we have this time, and we heard it in our last meeting, is that the contracting options for special counsel may have dramatic impacts on the budget. I'm fairly convinced that we would end up at a point where we will spend money on a special counsel. I think it is part of the discussion of which format and which contract option we take up, including whether or not that special counsel is within the general counsel's law firm, the point that Commissioner Hanson made, and I think very usefully at our last meeting. It's important to talk about that, but it's so intimately tied to the function of the special counsel that I think the two have to be discussed together, and we're not ready to do that tonight. That's why I'm cautious to go beyond that. The budgetary principles, including being good stewards of public money, is inherent in everything we do. And I don't think it needs to be brought out explicitly because it is such a clear guiding principle in everything we've done to date. That said, it could certainly be added to a refined statement of work, but I would much rather see it done there and reviewed by the commission as part of those interrelated pieces. I've already spoken a lot more than I meant to on that, so my apologies. Commissioner, Co-Vice Chair Garcia, then Commissioner Hanson, then Commissioner Larson. Rosette.
Yeah, so echo what you just said. I just want to remind the commissioners that everything is going to come back to the commission for them to approve. The RFP, the budget, all of that can be refined. What we really wanted to do is to make sure that we had consensus on moving forward, that we had consensus on retaining special counsel. I would like to call the question. I think it's time. Call the question, please.
I will ask because Commissioner Hanson and Commissioner Larson, who hasn't had a chance to speak, did have their hands up, but I will cut off debate at that point unless there's serious opposition. So Commissioner Hanson, then Commissioner Larson.
I just wanted to make the point that the budget, the cost of any contract is based on the statement of work. If you only have so much money to spend, then you develop your statement of work within those parameters. It's not the other way.
Thank you. Commissioner Larson.
I generally concur with what Commissioner Garcia and Commissioner Chan have been talking about here. I'm more concerned that we as a commission are not that involved. I think the commissioners or an ad hoc committee should get involved. The devil's really in the details. There's all these contracting options that we talked about. I don't know exactly what they are, and I don't know what the cost implications are or the timing implications. I think we really have to have that information before we can make an intelligent vote. That's it.
Thank you for that. All right. To call the motion to call a vote on this motion, I first need to confirm what we do with quote unquote, and this isn't a prerogative term, this is the rules of procedure as I learned them, an unfriendly amendment along the lines of what Commissioner Hanson proposed before the break. That's still an amendment you would like voted on?
Apparently, it would be better to just leave it out and move forward.
Okay, so we'll withdraw that. Thank you for that. I'll therefore, unless there are any clarifying questions on what we're voting on, I'll therefore ask Ryan, please call the vote.
Thank you. And the motion is the original motion that is up on the screen.
Right, and we'll read it for the record that the commission retains special counsel to perform legal services relative to draft and final redistricting maps as set forth in the draft statement of work presented to the commission.
Thank you, Chair Boehm. I will call the roll or call the vote. Commissioner Chen.
Nay.
Commissioner Garcia.
Aye.
Commissioner Chair Boehm.
Aye.
Commissioner Serban.
Aye.
Commissioner Pons.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman. One more time.
Aye, yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Dostal. Thank you, Commissioner Dostal. Absent. Commissioner Russ.
Aye.
Commissioner Vice Chair Katarina.
Aye.
Commissioner Diaz.
Aye.
Commissioner Larson.
Nay.
And Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
That motion passes.
All right. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you for the discussion. Thank you for the mutual respect. I do appreciate that, and I appreciate the time. Before we adjourn, I just want to check on any preferences for how we move forward. The option basically is, and I really want to be responsive to Commissioner Larson's point, but I think it was inherent in several of the commissioners' comments. How much commissioner involvement should there be in this? It would be a little difficult at this point to create an ad hoc committee tonight because we would need to lay out the purpose as such. But I certainly would be open to forming an ad hoc committee at our meeting on the 26th and ask staff and council to prepare in that direction. Another way to do it, just for awareness more than anything else, is that it is within the power of the chair, at least for my reading, and I'll make sure council doesn't have another reading, to assign duties to the two co-vice chairs and myself along those lines. In other words, we would take the initial impulse to move forward and prepare whatever was necessary, either for the 26th or for the next meeting. So I just wanted to see if there's, what it really comes down to is, do commissioners have an interest in serving on an ad hoc committee? I think my preference would be to let staff collect that on an expedited basis. So Barbara, I'll ask you to send out an email tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. Commissioners, I'll ask for responses, let's say by Friday night, Friday, 5 o'clock. That's okay. And again, I want to keep an open mind on whether and how much of this issue will be on our agenda for the 26th, because there is some real work to be done, and I don't want to have it on the agenda before having enough information in place and ready to go. That doesn't mean we wait another 2 weeks. We may very well look for another special meeting at one of those upcoming hearings if we're ready before then. So I'll beg your indulgence on that. But for now, I just ask that if you're interested in serving on an ad hoc, please let Barbara know in response to an email she'll be sending out. Commissioner Diaz.
Yes, I just have a clarifying question about the timeline for this, because it sounds like we want to move pretty expeditiously, and I would like to get a clear answer on why that is. Because that would determine the kind of structure that we would want to have for this. So I would like to get some information on that.
Sure. Maybe start with Marguerite on that.
Commissioner Diaz, as we heard from Flo, from Mr. McKenzie, the goal is to get the RPV analysis completed and available so it can influence the mapping, help you in making decisions at your draft map stage. The draft mapping appears like it's going to occur in around mid-October, maybe a little later. My strong recommendation then is that we would want a special counsel on board in the first half of October, contracting done, ready to look at the RPV report and give us his opinion that can be brought forth to you as you consider designing draft maps.
Okay, thank you.
Marguerite, this is Ramesses. I'm curious, what does the landscape look like out there for potential firms or attorneys who can do this type of work? Do we have, are we working with similarly to how we had, we were competing with with other commissions for demographers? Is that sort of the dynamic that we'll be facing as well?
I think we are. There are resources out there. The scope of this is limited. Our special counsel is not going to be sitting in at every one of our meetings. I think there's more capacity with the lawyers that are already engaged. And we don't necessarily need to go to litigators in the field, et cetera. We also have the universities, which have highly qualified attorneys that have worked as special masters for courts, states, commissions outside of the country that are available to be tapped. I think our resources are greater. The availability of talent is greater than it was for our demographic consultant.
Okay. So with that in mind, we'll ask commissioners to please respond expeditiously to the email from staff. Do some more thinking about this. We have our next regular meeting next Thursday at 4 p.m. and we'll have a public hearing in that. But as I said, we'll certainly discuss what the next steps are for this process at that meeting. If we're ready with anything worthy of the commission's consideration, we will bring it to the commission for consideration.
Chair Bain, may I just offer
Please.
for timeline in terms of bringing anything before the commission on the 26th? We would need to finalize that Friday, Monday morning at the latest for timely agenda posting.
Very good. Any closing comments, and then we'll adjourn.
I'd like to thank the public for all their participation and also to the county staff for their support of our work. You guys are doing a great job. Thank you, public, for calling in and appearing.
Okay. No, thanks for me as well. And for the commissioners participating virtually, I did notice a lot of conversation going on with members of the public during the break to encourage further contact, to encourage requests for speakers and all that. So I think there's been some good outreach on that. But again, I join, and I'm sure all the commissioners join in that, including those who submitted e-comments, as Commissioner Diaz pointed out, during the meeting and before the meeting. We're going to provide equal weight to all public input, and we appreciate it, and we look forward to much more. With that, and keeping in mind that our next meeting will be 4 p.m. next Thursday in El Cajon at the Ronald Reagan Community Center, I adjourn this special meeting at 8:19 p.m. Oh, and thanks as well to our clerk, who did an outstanding job through technical difficulties and lots of other challenges. A good first meeting, right? Thank you very much. Thanks again. We'll see you next Thursday.